All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at something totally wild. It's one of the most darkly satirical, mind-bendingly frustrating, and honestly fascinating stories out there. The Stamp That Ate My Cousin. This is a 40-year generational saga of a family trapped in an absolutely soul-crushing bureaucratic loop.
So what actually happens when you spend 4 decades waiting for a stamp from a department that, legally speaking, doesn't even exist? Well, our story drops us straight into Municipal Office 47B. It's this brutalist concrete nightmare where we really get to see the unbelievable lengths humans will go to find some kind of order in total chaos.
Just to wrap your head around the sheer scale of this absurdity, think about what was happening outside the walls of Municipal Office 47B. History was literally happening. The Berlin Wall fell, Yugoslavia completely collapsed. In 1993, hyperinflation hit so hard a loaf of bread cost 50 million dinars. And in 1999, NATO bombs actually shook the city. But inside, the line at counter 4 literally never changed. Not the clerk, not the rules, and definitely not the waiting.
Part 1. The Quest for the Stamp. It all kicks off back in 1981 with Dragan Jovanović. His dying grandmother, Baba Milica, gave him one last task. Just go get Form 17Z/3A stamped so he could inherit her apartment. She promised it would take 15 minutes, maybe 20 at most. But instead, he walks straight into what the regulars call administrative time. It's this weird dimension where logic is just a cruel joke. Counter 7 tells him, hey, you need Form 23K from Counter 7 over in Building C. So he goes to Counter 7 and they tell him he needs the updated version from Counter 12. He fills that out, drops it in a pending box, and when he comes back 2 days later, the clerk is gone, the form is completely vanished, and they tell him to go to Building M, which, by the way, was demolished in 1976.
Right at the center of this absolute maze is Gordana. She's the terrifying clerk at Counter 4, and she's been crushing dreams from behind her glass partition since 1965. And she hits Dragan with this chilling truth. She says, you think you are filling out forms to get a stamp, but really you are being processed by the forms. She is totally, absolutely the master of this domain.
Which brings us to a, frankly, staggering number, 12 years. Dragan waited every single Tuesday and Thursday for 12 solid years. Because of this line, he lost his fiancée, he lost his job, and arguably he lost his mind. And then tragically, in 1993, he actually died right there in the hallway of Municipal Office 47-B. He was clutching his grandmother's leather folder, waiting for a stamp he never ever got.
Part 2. Inheriting the queue. So it's 1993 now, and Dragan's son Branko inherits a lot more than just a folder of ancient paperwork. He inherits his dead father's physical spot as fourth in line at Counter 4. Now at first, Branko's just this pragmatic guy selling bootleg cassette tapes, just trying to survive the 90s. He looks at this queue and thinks it's absolute insanity. But you know how the sunk cost fallacy works, right? It slowly starts to consume his life. His motivation totally shifts. It goes from the practical desire of actually owning an apartment to this deep psychological need to prove that his father's 12 years of suffering weren't completely meaningless.
And Branko's induction into this line is just a masterpiece of bureaucratic nonsense. Check this out. To inherit the spot, he has to get Form 71M, which Gordana only issues on Wednesdays between 2 and 3 p.m. He gets it from her, fills it out, brings it back on Thursday morning, only for her to reject it. Why? Because she's maliciously acting as 2 completely different departments on 2 different days. You literally cannot make this stuff up.
Part 3. A worthless victory.
Let's jump forward to 2003. After 7 long years, Branko miraculously tracks down the original 1965 property deed, and Gordana finally issues the elusive inheritance stamp. He actually won. But man, here comes the tragic punchline. He takes his victorious, freshly stamped paper to a lawyer, only to find out that the apartment has been legally occupied by refugees for years. He can't evict them, and he definitely can't live there. Eventually, some speculator offers him 3,000 euros for the deed. Think about that. 7 years of his life and his father's entire adult life, all boiling down to a measly 3,000 euros?
Which brings us to a really profound psychological question. Instead of just taking the money and running, Branko does the unthinkable. He goes back to the queue. He doesn't even need a stamp anymore, but he goes right back to sit on that same bench every Tuesday and Thursday. Why on earth would anyone do that?
Well, to figure that out, we have to talk to Mika. Mika is a guy who has been waiting literally decades just for a basic death certificate. And he beautifully, perfectly articulates the true nature of counter 4. He says, we're waiting for the universe to acknowledge that we exist, that we matter. Over time, this queue, it became their religion. It became their surrogate family. It actually gave them structure in a completely chaotic world.
Part 4. The Auditor's Rebellion.
So the saga shifts again to the third generation. The year is 2011, and enter Nikola, Branko's son. Knowing exactly what this absurd queue did to his family, he actually becomes an administrative lawyer for one specific reason: to audit, expose, and permanently destroy counter 4. He digs deep into the municipal archives and finds the ultimate weapon. It's a memo from 1982 proving that the Department of Verification of Inheritance documentation was officially dissolved, meaning Gordana has had absolutely zero legal authority to issue stamps for 33 years. Everything she's done since then has been a complete phantom process.
Armed with this, Nikola takes the evidence straight to the facility director, who marches right down to counter 4 to shut the whole thing down. Now, Nikola expects the queue to cheer. He's freeing them, right? Well, instead, the queue members violently protest. Mika, the guy who was waited for 66 years, literally screams in defiance, because taking away the line doesn't free them at all. It takes away their life's entire purpose. And in the middle of all this chaos, Gordana just drops this incredibly chilling philosophical truth bomb on this group of young reformers. She says, I am the counter that says no. I exist to teach you that the universe owes you nothing. She isn't just a municipal clerk anymore. She's become the literal physical embodiment of arbitrary power. She's basically a dragon guarding a completely empty cave. Part 5. The Eternal Counter. Completely defeated by a system that desperately doesn't want to be fixed, Nikola does the unthinkable. He asks for an appeal form, and he joins the queue himself. He takes his place on the bench, ensuring the family curse just keeps on going. And by the late 2010s, we see the true, devastating toll of this inertia. Mika has spent a staggering 48 years in line, an entire human life, just devoured by institutional inertia, waiting for a piece of paper that legally means absolutely nothing.
And the absurdity reaches its absolute peak when counter 4 basically evolves into a recognized cultural phenomenon. I mean, it literally becomes a self-governing society with its own rules and its own mythology. People start showing up seeking spiritual enlightenment. University anthropologist Dr. Anastasia Noviks embeds herself for 18 months and writes this award-winning paper on their meaning-making rituals. Tourist guides even start bringing groups through the hallway. It's wild.
But the most telling moment of the whole saga comes one night when Gordana stays late. She pulls out the eternal stamp, this mythical, incredibly ornate brass artifact. She offers it to the queue. She actually asks who is ready for completion. And the result? Not a single person steps forward. Because if they take the stamp, the quest is over. And if the quest is over, they have to face the real world, where they are just ordinary people who, frankly, wasted their lives.
So I want to leave you with a deeply provocative thought to chew on. If your greatest struggle was suddenly resolved today, what would you do tomorrow? Are we all, in our own ways, just standing in our own lines, secretly terrified of what happens when we finally get the stamp? Think about that. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. And remember, keep seeking the truth behind the chaos.